Hey guys, I have another fountain pen related video. It's not really even just fountain pen related, but it's more of like a writing philosophy video. I'm basically recording this audio over an image of what my current writing setup is in terms of writing out letters, just like personal letters and whatnot. I don't always use this, but if the occasion calls for it, it's what I'll use. You can see I have Pilot Iroshizuku line tsuki-yo ink. I have my Lamy 2000 in extra fine, and I have a pad of Clairefontaine Triomphe. It's lined. I do plan on getting an unlined pad actually. And these three items are, basically the three items that I will write personal letters out with, provided I need to write something that long. Like it's a A4 size sheet of paper. The ink itself costs $28 per 50 milliliters, and that's a 50 milliliter bottle. Granted, a lot of that cost is going into the packaging of the ink. The glass bottle is very, very nice. But the ink itself is actually very well behaved. It's a good, very high performance ink in my opinion. And the inks in the Iroshizuku line, they have different shades that you don't really quite get with any other brand. Some people will say, oh, this diamine color is close to this or that. Yeah, it's close, but it's not quite the same. MSRP on that ink, I think, is like $35. It's what Pilot Namiki USA says that MSRP is in the US. And I believe that for US distributors, if you want to be an official distributor, the lowest you can price it at is $28, and most retailers price it at that price point. I believe before it became official that Namiki US was distributing it and people were importing it, it was actually selling for around $22, which is still kind of expensive, but not that expensive, I suppose you could say. Some of the other inks were comparable in price, but this price increase kind of just really set it up apart. Anyway, that different topic. The Clairefontaine Triomphe, it's a pad of, the A4 size pad of 50 sheets is around $9. And, the Lamy 2000 MSRP is $195. You can find it street for around $140 and $160, depending on where you look. So as of right now, these are, the most expensive ink, most expensive paper I have, and the most expensive pen I have. Like I said, this video is actually going to be more just about writing. A lot of people ask me why I still write letters by hand and mail them out. It's not the first time where people are like, why are you investing so much time in like pens? Like, you already get crap for using a fountain pen, but like if you tell people how much you spend on a pen, like it gets a little excessive, And when I tell people that, I'm trying to work on my handwriting and everything, I get a lot of questions like, oh, why are you even bothering to do this? Like, no one really writes anymore, which is kind of true, I suppose. Most of the time for what people do, a lot of it's on the computer now, and letters, by snail mail is kind of a thing of the past, People just text or send messages through Facebook or Twitter, or they just send emails, And in my mind, yes, there's a certain place for using digital media. Obviously, I don't go around mailing everything by the postal service. I do use email on a daily basis, on probably an hourly basis of that. But there are just some occasions where I feel like digital media has gotten to the point where it's just so impersonal. There are, I remember reading a few weeks ago in the New York Times about dating and how kind of the digital era has kind of ruined dating. Like, people go on Facebook and kind of just find out everything about someone, and people aren't really willing to invest the time or money into figuring out if a relationship is going to work out. Things are just moving at a much faster pace. And for me, emails seem very unpersonal. I mean, if you look at letters that companies send out and stuff, even mass letters like memos and whatnot, yeah, granted, most of the time those letters will be typed out and printed out, but you still see like a lot of companies, they're actually willing to actually have whoever is writing that letter supposedly sign the letter. Granted, I understand that not you know, a CEO of a company isn't always signing all the letters. Maybe they're having like an assistant do it for them or whatever. But it's just that small bit of personalization that makes the letter feel more like personal. Like, I'm overusing the word, but that's just really the case. And I can understand that if you have to write letters to hundreds of people, it's not practical for you to handwrite them all. It would just take too much time. So that's why people just sign it by pen. Although, granted, some signatures aren't even real and they're just digital signatures, but whatever. Let's just say that people are signing those letters by hand with a pen. For me, when I get a handwritten letter, it feels so much different than getting any kind of email, any kind of other digital correspondence. And it's just, for me at least, I kind of think about the time that the person put behind actually physically writing out the letter. Because obviously typing out a letter, depending on how much you use a computer, generally for the modern era, typing is much faster than writing. Especially if you want to write really like legibly. You know, like my handwriting, it's not the greatest. When I write fast, it's terrible. Like, very few people can read my handwriting when I write fast. When I write slowly, I can actually form nicer letters, I suppose. It's still not the best in the world, but it's at least legible for the majority of people that may read it. And I know, like, I don't send letters out that often anymore either, but when I do, either it's a pen pals or like thank you notes or whatever, and I handwrite it, I know how much time it takes for me to just write a simple one-page letter. You know, if I were to type it, yeah, I could type out a one-page letter within like 5-10 minutes, you know, depending on how much thought I have to put into it. But when I handwrite it, you know, especially for someone like me who's a little anal about stuff, like, I don't like having scratch outs in my handwritten letters. I don't like, obviously, having grammatical errors. I don't like having misspellings. I don't use whiteout, first of all. That's out of the question. Like, using whiteout with a fountain pens are really kind of iffy because you might kind of clog up the nib a little bit with the stuff. But regardless, like, I don't like how whiteout looks on a piece of paper, and I think it kind of just ruins it. So for me, when I write a letter, it may take me half an hour just to write a simple one-page letter, and that's because I may actually have to write it over 5 or 6 times. Usually I'll write it out the first time, I'll go through it and check for spelling mistakes and grammar at, you know, to the best of my ability without going super crazy about it, because it's just a letter. It's not like I'm writing my resume or something super official. It's just, you know, a personal letter. And I will rewrite it, and, you know, so a lot of times when I'm thinking about what I want to write and I'm writing at the same time, like, sometimes your hand just doesn't do what your mind thinks, and it just does its own thing, and I'll see, like, I'll misspell something, or something just is imperfect about it, and then I end up rewriting it again and again. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe people aren't like that. People just don't care as much, I suppose. But for me, I would hope that the people on the receiving end realized the time and effort that was put into it versus just me typing something out and printing it out. You know, because even when you actually mail something by snail mail, if it's all typed out and printed out, it's just not the same. And at that point, I feel like if you're just going to type everything out, you might as well just send it by email. Like, you kind of lose some of the charm of the handwritten aspect of a letter. And recently, since I've really gotten back into fountain pens again, you know, I've been using fountain pens for years now, but never to the extent, you know, in terms of the number of pens, the different inks and stuff. It's a whole new world that I've kind of opened myself up to, and, you know, I'm trying to dive deeper into and explore. But now I went ahead and I got nicer stationery. Like, obviously this Triumph paper is very good. It's not cheap paper. But because people don't write letters that often, I don't think it's that expensive Like, yeah, per sheet it's expensive, but how many sheets are you gonna actually use within a year? And that's the thing. People are not willing. People look at the prices. They'll think, you paid $9 for a pad of 50 sheets of paper, and like $195 MSRP pen, or like $28 for 50 milliliters of ink. 50 milliliters is like less than 2 ounces. I'm pretty sure. I think it's like around 1.5 ounces. Because I believe 30 mils is around an ounce. Anyway, like, people look at that and they say, like, you're crazy. Like, how can you spend so much money? But in my mind, like, that bottle of ink will last me at least a year. I don't write that much. Even when I write for work, when I write out data sheets and everything, it's not a lot of text, and I really don't go through a lot of ink. It's not like I'm back in school again. And in all honesty, when I was taking notes in school with a fountain pen, through college, I use a fountain pen for everything, even stuff like math. And a 3-ounce bottle of Pelikan Brilliant Black ink would last me like 2 years, and I would be refilling my pen maybe once or twice a week, depending on, how many notes I'm taking. Obviously, different majors will have different varying amounts of note taking. So for me, like, if I take this total cost of, leave the pen out, let's just say $9 for the paper, $20 for the ink. What is that? $37 total. Like, this will last me well over a year. I don't really see myself writing more than 50 letters in a year. Granted, I may waste some sheets because I'll have to rewrite something. So even if I cut it down in half, like, that's 25 letters. Like, I'm probably not going to do that. Maybe I'll write one letter once or twice a month, And you disperse that $37 cost over a year. It's very little per month. And I understand not everyone will appreciate it. Not everyone's going to pick up a sheet of Clairefontaine Triomphe and be like, wow, this is amazing paper. And if you really get into it, you'll start noticing different degrees of nice paper. Obviously people feel like thicker, heavier weight paper is generally more of a premium feel. Obviously that's why resumes, a lot of times, it's nice to get printed on parchment paper and everything, because it's very heavy paper. But just like how smooth the paper is amazing. It's just small details that I tend to pick up. And while I'm not saying everyone has to go out and spend a lot of money on stationery, I think it wouldn't hurt people to hand write some stuff more often than to type. Even if you're not mailing it out, even if you're just handing it off to someone, just take the time and try and improve your handwriting and write things out and look over it. I feel like the more time you spend on a letter, you actually spend more time thinking about what you've written into it versus just typing. And your grammar will probably be better, not in terms of like proofreading and stuff, but just you'll be able to kind of express what you want to say better than if you were to just type an email, have spell check do the grammar and spelling check for you, and then just send it out. Because in my mind, since computers are making it so easy to write now these days, it's kind of dumbing people down. And when you like look at people writing by hand now, if they don't have a computer, like, that's why spelling now is terrible for a lot of kids, because they have spell check and on their phones they have autocorrect, and a lot of times you see on these websites where people will post up like, autocorrect like moments where like it completely screws up what they mean to say, and it becomes like an embarrassing situation for them. And honestly, it's just because they're not used to having to actually re-look at what they've typed out or written. Even if it's just for a short text, you should always look at what you do, like what you type out. When I send text, I may send out some spelling mistakes sometimes because I'm in a rush, but the general gist of what I want to say, I make sure is in that text before I send it out. So, I think people should really give handwriting a shot again. I think it'll improve people's grammars, people's spelling ability, and you'll be able to kind of improve even your digital media. Like, if you want to send an email, maybe write it out first and then retype it, and then that'll give you the time to rethink what you actually want to say. you know, a lot of writers, they say that they still prefer to write their novels or whatever with a notebook and paper and a notebook and pen first, because it adds an additional step for them to troubleshoot and look over what they've written. So that was it, just like a long rant about how I feel about how people should be writing more. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thanks for watching or listening. Really, it's just a picture.